Discover the hidden truths of all 12 zodiac signs, 7 surprising transformations exposed. As Sarah waded through boxes in the dim attic, the chill of the Indiana night seeped through the drafty walls. Memories of her grandmother, shadowy yet comforting, intermingled with an inexplicable feeling of dread. Here, amidst the remnants of a life once lived, she came across a collection of delicate journals. The faded pages whispered ancient secrets, laced with her grandmother's delicate handwriting, enticing Sarah to delve deeper. Each entry detailed astrological insights that seemed less like knowledge and more like a portal to possibility, beckoning her to discover something profound. But as the weight of her current reality pressed upon her, a voice in her head dared her to question, what good were these celestial truths when her feet were so firmly planted in the unyielding soil of Oakwood? Navigating life as a single mother meant balancing scalding nights at the hospital, where the fluorescent lights washed over her tired body, and the needs of Emily and Noah, whose voices echoed with untapped potential. Every morning, she felt the creeping sense of financial insecurity tightening around her ribs. Emily, sweet and timid, never spoke up in class, and Noah faced relentless teasing for his thick glasses. Surely, a mother should have the means to defend her children, but Sarah hesitated. Perhaps she wasn't equipped to do anything more than fret at night when the world was quiet. Before a subtle aspen rustled against the window, she stumbled into thoughts that spiraled. What if this newfound knowledge could lift her from mediocrity? But wrestling with the prospect of change also revealed an unsettling truth: this small-town life held unwavering beliefs many discarded what they deemed ludicrous. The conversations she overheard dragged down her confidence, those whispers following her like shadows, reminding her to stay in line, to defer to the norm. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. A surge of defiant energy coursed through her as she recalled a moment when she stood up for a single father at her hospital, advocating for his care in a system that cloaked patients in financial judgment. It had felt like an electric rebellion, the stakes impossibly high. Yet with every ripple of courage came the impending wave of doubt. Was she risking her career for a cause that wouldn't change the world, just one life? Faces of the community echoed back at her, friends distanced themselves, a silent questioning that filled the air. Then, one fateful evening, as she tucked Emily in and glanced at Noah's furrowed brow, she sensed the deepest anguish yet. Their struggles were painfully tangible, amplifying the dissonance within her heart. What did she believe? Each day brought new fears. Would Noah be bullied tomorrow? Would Emily fight her internal battles, or would they swallow her whole? The more she explored astrology, the more she battled with a collective consciousness that belittled her. With everything hanging in the balance, a chilling moment arrived. The weight of her children's opinions rested above her like an unsteady crown. They had overheard something they shouldn't have, a conversation laced with secrets that might alter everything, a revelation that sent icy tendrils up her spine. Now, she understood, the stakes were monumental, and in this crossroads of destiny, every choice blinked back at her in myriad ways. Would faith in her own journey outweigh the winds of skepticism swirling around her? The heart of her story, and perhaps her legacy, trembled on the tip of the unknown. Sarah's fingers traced the faded ink on her grandmother's journals, the fragile connection to her past igniting a spark within her. Each word was a challenge, an unanswered question: who was she meant to be? As she clutched the journals to her chest, she felt a rush of urgency. Perhaps these ancient lessons could offer her clarity in the chaos. Under the dim light filtering through the attic window, she realized that astrology was not merely a pastime or ancient superstition. It had the potential to illuminate pathways she had yet to consider. With renewed resolve, Sarah descended the attic ladder, the journals now tucked in her worn satchel. Each creak of the wood echoed her own uncertainty as she navigated toward her responsibilities. The faint murmurs of Emily's dreams and Noah's worries continued to coil around her thoughts. She needed to be their advocate, not just in the world but within her own beliefs. The remnants of her grandmother's wisdom, laden with astrology symbols and insights, could perhaps serve as her guide. Days turned into a blur of hospital shifts and school pickups, but late nights became sacred. Under the warm glow of a desk lamp, Sarah immersed herself in her grandmother's teachings. The pages revealed more than mere symbols, they unraveled deeper meanings tied to personal growth and the cosmic shifts influencing her life. In those moments, she was not just a struggling nurse, but a seeker of truth, threading through the fabric of the human psyche with resilience and vigilance. One entry, in particular, resonated. It spoke of the transformative power of self-belief and the significance of standing firm against adversity, aligning with one's true nature. Sarah read it over and over, a mantra imprinted in her mind. The idea of self-advocacy rippled through her, awakening a fire she thought had dimmed. What if she applied this wisdom not just to her life but actively taught it to Emily and Noah? Could they find clarity beyond the noise and pain shaped by the world's judgments? The following week, during an ordinary yet pivotal family dinner, Sarah broached the subject, pulling from her recent reflections. As she shared insights, Emily remained quiet, her eyes wide, weighing the concepts of fate and interpersonal connections. Noah's brow furrowed, his typical expression reflecting skepticism tinged with curiosity. "So, you're saying the stars have reasons for what we feel?" Noah asked, the doubt in his voice revealing a longing for understanding. His question stirred something within her. Did he want to believe as much as she did? Their conversation spiraled deeper, unveiling layers of their insecurities. Emily confessed her fear of standing up in class, while Noah revealed the constant dread of becoming a target for his peers. In that moment, Sarah realized her vulnerability and struggle could bridge the gap, transforming her into a source of strength instead of merely a passive figure in their lives. The teachings of the Zodiac weren't just for her, they could empower her children as well. As she watched them connect with their emotions, an unexpected warmth enveloped her heart. Each hesitant word shared filled the gaps of unspoken conversations, revealing shadows that haunted their self-worth. It felt as if they were forming an unbreakable bond, fortified by revelations about themselves. But new tensions soon unfurled. External judgment lingered, and despite the vibrant connections they forged, doubt knocked at the door. That evening marked only the beginning. As Sarah tucked them in later, a bold thought struck her, a challenge that resonated with her newfound convictions. She decided to harness the cosmic energies her grandmother wrote about, to explore and implement them actively. Sarah questioned not only her own battles but the larger role she could play in guiding Emily and Noah. How could they rise above the uncertainty that clung to their lives? As she closed the door to their room, her pulse quickened with the realization that she might have to confront more than just their fears. She might have to face the very beliefs of those in their community who dismissed her aspirations. The weight of their skepticism loomed large, dictating what was acceptable. What would it take to challenge these boundaries and create a new path of understanding? Uncertain but determined, Sarah took a deep breath. Holding her grandmother's journals close, she recognized that the real journey was only just beginning. The true test would be whether she could muster the courage to embrace the truth she was awakening. The moment of profound revelation felt imminent, shrouded in mystery and fraught with risks. Would she rise with her children in the face of doubt, or would the shadows of their small-town expectations dampen the light she felt emerging? The following days transformed into a crucible for Sarah, melding her newfound insights with the realities of her life. Each patient she tended to, each homework assignment she guided Emily through, and every angry word she exchanged with Noah over trivial matters now bore the weight of her introspection. She was acutely aware of the influence of her grandmother's teachings, entwining them with her role as a mother and caregiver. One evening, while hovering between exhaustion and fervor, Sarah decided it was time to extend their conversations from the dining table to real-life scenarios. She arranged a small weekend gathering for Emily and Noah's friends, an idea that sent a ripple of excitement through her. Under the banner of astrology, she could create a space where children could express their inner worlds without fear, learning how to align their truths with their actions. The day of the gathering arrived, each corner of their modest living room filled with makeshift zodiac symbols cut from colored paper, brightening the room with potential. She embraced the disarray, reminding herself that imperfection embodied growth. Sarah felt an electrifying surge as Noah welcomed his friends, their jovial chatter serving as a soundscape to her anticipated lessons. As the children settled in, Sarah sparked discussions by linking each zodiac sign to traits the kids could explore within themselves. She had built a simple framework, encouraging them to embody qualities they admired while recognizing those they wanted to transform. Emily chose the sign of Leo, the courageous lion, while Noah gravitated toward the observant trait of Virgo. It was an exhilarating moment as she watched them engage with concepts she had once doubted, her children taking center stage, exploring their identities through the lens of the cosmos. But as Sarah orchestrated the discussions, challenging them to speak openly about their insecurities related to their chosen signs, an unnerving silence enveloped the room. Some children exchanged furtive glances, others shifted uncomfortably. Even Noah, who had been so eager at first, suddenly seemed disillusioned, doubt flickering in his blue eyes. What if their peers laughed at their openness? What if even her own children abandoned this adventure for the safer complexities of silence? Struggling to maintain the momentum, Sarah decided to reveal her own vulnerabilities. With a shaky voice, she shared her journey of rediscovery through astrology, the doubts she faced daily, and how these lessons sparked courage within her. She described moments of anguish and uncertainty, but also the vibrant empowerment that arose from ownership of her voice. The room remained quiet, but in that silence, Sarah witnessed a shift. Slowly, one child, inspired perhaps by her raw honesty, articulated his fears of never measuring up to his older sibling, which sparked more confessions. Emily spoke of her claustrophobia in social settings and how she felt engulfed by others' opinions. As vulnerability blossomed, the energy in the room shifted, revealing layers of complex emotions. Noah reluctantly echoed her sentiments, sharing his anguish about being a target for ridicule. His resistance ebbed as he felt the warmth of connection through shared experiences. It was a moment of clarity. Sarah realized the exchange was igniting more than just acceptance, it was creating a foundation of understanding. The evening culminated in an unexpected yet revealing way. They concluded the gathering with a pledge: one, to support and encourage each other, tap into each sign's potential, and harness self-advocacy together. It was their promise to redefine peer interactions in a space where thoughts were valued and vulnerabilities shared, carving a new path through the shadows of fear that had previously silenced them. Exhausted but exhilarated, Sarah tucked Emily and Noah into bed, a renewed sense of purpose coursing through her veins. The experience transformed her understanding of empowerment not as a solitary journey but as a shared odyssey. Yet, as she prepared to settle down, uncertainty gnawed at her. How would this experience translate into their day-to-day lives, especially when faced with the complexities of their peers outside their makeshift haven? With a flick of the lamp, she considered the opinions swirling beyond her four walls, the criticism that could dismantle everything they built. Would they uphold their pledge amid external judgment, or would the resolve falter under pressure? The answers felt tantalizingly close yet distinctly elusive, drawing Sarah further into the depths of her psyche. What had begun as a simple endeavor into astrology had now woven an intricate tapestry of leadership, vulnerability, and communal connection. One thought echoed above the rest: how far could this journey extend beyond their own walls? Sarah's heart pounded as she envisioned steps toward a greater challenge. Would she dare to confront the prevailing doubts of their community and transform their shared understanding into broader change? As she closed her eyes, a distinct determination began to form. The path ahead was murky yet inviting, a profound test on the horizon. It beckoned her to discover what true advocacy could mean when the stars aligned with her resolve. The days that followed the gathering were steeped in contemplation for Sarah. She moved through her routine with a sense of purpose but also a rising tide of anxiety. The conversations she had initiated with the children echoed in her mind, often resurfacing as reminders of both her aspirations and her fears. The vulnerability she had encouraged in others had ignited something within her, revealing shadows she still needed to navigate. At work, the pressure of her responsibilities loomed large. The hospital buzzed with activity, patients needing her empathy and expertise. Each shift felt heavier than the last, the emotional reservoir she drew from seemed to be diminishing. The significance of her grandmother's teachings pressed upon her heart with every interaction, a constant reminder of the deep-rooted values she desperately wanted to impart to Emily and Noah. With thoughts racing, Sarah began to see a pattern in her interactions. She noticed that fear often dictated the conversations in the break room, where colleagues whispered about patients, sharing unfiltered opinions. Even her once engaging chats with fellow nurses felt tainted with gossip. What had started as innocent banter often spiraled into judgments that could easily puncture someone's spirit. One afternoon, after a particularly draining shift, Sarah sat down with a cup of coffee, her mind grappling with yet another overheard conversation that fueled her discomfort. It was as though each exchange reinforced an unspoken hierarchy of worth, one that kept individuals bound by the insecurities hidden just beneath the surface. She realized that she had been too passive. The silent acceptance of this toxic environment was contrary to the advocacy she intended to cultivate. Reflecting on the empowering atmosphere she fostered during the gathering, Sarah felt a welling of resolve. She understood that the courage to confront difficult realities was essential not only for her children but for herself and her colleagues too. In a decisive moment, she made a plan to address the pervasive negativity at work not with confrontation, but with affirmation. The following week, during their morning huddle, Sarah volunteered to lead a discussion. Her colleagues looked at her with a mix of confusion and curiosity. With a deep breath, she recounted the transformative impact of her recent experience with the children and their exploration of vulnerability through astrology. As she spoke, Sarah emphasized the importance of supporting each other rather than succumbing to fear-induced judgments. She painted a vivid picture of a workplace defined by encouragement, a stark contrast to the whispers of doubt she had become accustomed to, yet, as she anticipated, the room quieted. Some nurses regarded her with disbelief, while others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. It was a confrontation of sorts, albeit an unintentional one. She could sense the unspoken challenge hanging in the air. What right did she have to change the status quo, to ask them to redefine their interactions? Could she truly inspire change when she herself battled fluctuating confidence, but instead of retreating, she pressed on? Sarah proposed a simple exercise. Each week, they would share one positive story about a patient experience or celebrate another colleague's work. Her colleagues were hesitant at first, skepticism evident in their eyes, but Sarah felt the rawness of her intention ripple through the room. Perhaps it was the shared weariness of long shifts or the recognition of collective frustrations that nudged them toward agreement. Through this small shift, Sarah began to see glimmers of transformation. As stories of resilience and positivity emerged, so did an unexpected camaraderie. Colleagues who had chosen silence began opening up about their feelings and experiences, breaking down barriers that had kept them isolated. Watching this unfold sparked a newfound energy within her. Finally, she felt that she was leading in a direction aligned with her values. Yet, under the exhilaration lay an undercurrent of vulnerability. How sustainable was this change? Would her calls for support backfire when faced with overt criticism from those resistant to change? As she dove into this dynamic, a fresh sense of urgency intensified. Sarah envisioned larger implications. If she could influence her workplace dynamics positively, what could this approach mean for Emily and Noah when they stepped outside their own safe space? Contemplating the challenges ahead, Sarah knew she stood at the precipice of something transformative but uncertain. The hurdles seemed daunting, she could feel their weight, yet the possibility of advocating for a culture of encouragement loomed larger than her doubts. With renewed commitment, she resolved to push forward. Determined, she returned home one evening to find Emily and Noah deep in conversation, with their own reflections on those pivotal moments from their gatherings swirling around them. Eyes shimmering with anticipation, they looked up as she entered. She paused, curiosity piquing her interest. What insights had her children gleaned from their experience? The spark of her transformative journey was beginning to manifest in them, echoing her own evolution. Yet, a question lingered on her lips: could their newfound courage withstand the trials of the outside world? Caught in the thrall of shared exploration, Sarah felt a familiar tension rise. Do they possess the resilience to face external challenges, or would they retreat when confronted with the world's indifference? The answers awaited, tenaciously lingering just beyond their grasp. The following days unfolded with a sense of cautious hope. Each evening, Sarah found herself gathering insights not only from her children but also within the frenetic walls of the hospital. The environment remained charged with underlying strains, yet she was gradually shifting the dynamic. Colleagues began to engage in the positive sharing sessions, albeit awkwardly at first. Each week, one brave nurse would step up to recount a heartwarming tale. On the surface, it was simple, the act of sharing, but beneath, it sparked a deeper connection previously missed. As stories emerged, they exposed dimensions of her colleagues' personalities Sarah had never witnessed. The grizzled veteran, who had always seemed embittered by the weight of the world, revealed his struggles with vulnerability during a particularly taxing case involving a young patient. The laughter and camaraderie that followed felt electric, a shift that sent ripples of warmth through the room. But even amidst the burgeoning relationships, Sarah remained burdened by a nagging doubt: would this newfound openness sustain itself in the face of inevitable hardship? Her next shift brought a juxtaposition of emotions. The emergency wing was unusually chaotic, a reminder of the relentless nature of their work. A minor car accident had flooded their unit with victims, leaving no time for the warmth they had cultivated. Tension spiked as stress levels rose. Sarah, caught between the urgency of her duties and the need for encouragement, felt her resolve tested. She witnessed her colleagues revert, slipping back into the familiar pattern of negativity. As a particularly challenging case unfolded, a teenager on the brink of despair, Sarah faced a choice. She could choose to position herself within the chaos, feeding into the darkness swirling around her, or she could rise above, anchoring herself in the strength she had fostered. Strangely, she found herself recalling the children from the gathering, those bright faces that had contributed so richly to her perspective. Remembering their laughter and fearless vulnerability solidified her determination. Sarah took a quiet moment, pushing aside the anxious noise of the emergency room. She sought a way to bridge the gap, to offer comfort to her team even amidst the storm. She initiated a group huddle in the corner of the chaos. With urgency, she shared her vision: it's okay to feel overwhelmed. These stories we've shared, they've changed us, they remind us of humanity. Let us pause and ground ourselves in that. The silence that followed was heavy, filled with uncertainty and exhaustion. One by one, her colleagues began to share their feelings about the day's events, the panic that loomed large, and the weight of the tough cases they faced. Gradually, the atmosphere thickened with understanding and mutual respect. They became a network of compassion, an emotional buffer against the crushing reality of their work. It felt like a small victory, yet the larger battles loomed ahead. When the shift finally ended, fatigue washed over Sarah. However, she sensed a shift within herself too. This newfound acknowledgement of vulnerability empowered her to confront her own fears. The courageous act of leading the charge had pushed her out of her comfort zone, but she was starting to see the real potential behind it. At home, an unexpected scene greeted her. Emily and Noah were sprawled on the floor, surrounded by art supplies. They had begun crafting their own stories based on lessons learned from their gathering, stories dripping with possibilities. An energy ignited within Sarah, perhaps each of them was growing in synchronicity, learning to navigate a world constructed from the values she had imparted. This was a collective evolution she had not anticipated, yet, as she observed their artistic expressions, a shadow cast doubt upon her excitement. What if the world they faced proved more challenging than her well-intentioned teachings could prepare them for? Would their newly developed resilience endure when confronted with the harsh realities of life? Together, they shared laughs over the colorful artwork, yet the looming question prickled at Sarah's mind: as she fostered change, was she also fostering an unrealistic worldview for her children? They were stepping into an arena filled with harsh truths, and perhaps she was not equipping them adequately for that battle. As she settled down beside them, internal deliberation swirled within her. Could she challenge her fears head-on, embracing discomfort, while simultaneously preparing her children for the world outside their nurturing home? The tension between protection and empowerment hung heavily in the air. With mounting urgency coursing through her veins, Sarah realized the time had come for a more radical exploration. What truths would they unearth together, and could they withstand the trials of a world often indifferent to individuality? These questions crystallized with a clarity she had not anticipated. The next step awaited, both in her professional and personal life, demanding a courage that felt overwhelming yet exhilarating. The answers were shrouded in uncertainty, fueling her desire to face what lay ahead. In the weeks that followed, Sarah found herself navigating the treacherous waters of self-discovery both at work and at home. The emergency room had become a mirror reflecting her inner turmoil and growth. Despite the chaos, she had learned to weave the threads of vulnerability into the fabric of her daily interactions. Each shift felt like a test, as she grappled with her dual roles as a caregiver and a leader. One evening, after a particularly harrowing shift, she sat on the edge of her bed, feeling the weight of exhaustion seep into her bones. It had been a day rife with despair. An elderly patient had passed away despite their best efforts. Her colleagues had been affected, but instead of retreating into silence, they had rallied around one another. Yet Sarah recognized the cracks beneath the surface. The group's solidarity now hinged on fleeting moments of connection. It was fragile, and she feared it could shatter at the next emotional blow. Determined to reinforce the bonds they were starting to form, she devised a plan. She approached her supervisor with a proposition: a weekly dinner gathering for the staff. A place where they could openly share their experiences beyond the clinical walls, allowing the humanity of their stories to flourish in the absence of scrubs and patient charts. To her surprise, her supervisor agreed, acknowledging the undeniable impact it could have on morale. With the dinner arrangement set, Sarah felt a surge of purpose. Planning the first gathering became her refuge amidst the chaos of her job and the responsibilities at home. However, the excitement faded as doubt crept in. Would her colleagues turn out? Would they really share their stories, or would it become just another forced exercise in vulnerability? At home, she found herself preoccupied, her children drawing her back to simpler, lighter moments. Emily and Noah continued their artistic endeavors, showcasing their unfiltered ideas in vibrant colors, yet it was Sarah who struggled to channel the same spirit. What if I fail them as a mentor, she thought, tracing her fingers over the art supplies scattered across the kitchen table. Moments of self-doubt lingered like shadows even in the presence of their creativity. As the day of the gathering approached, Sarah took deliberate steps to prepare. She gathered anecdotes from her colleagues, sketches of the emotional landscapes they navigated daily. Inviting them to share at the dinner would not only ease her anxiety but reinforce her belief that everyone had valuable experiences to contribute. The fragility of human connection had become a resonant theme in her life, yet the prospect of public vulnerability still terrified her. The evening of the first gathering arrived, and as she set the table, tension twisted in her stomach. Her colleagues filed in, some indentured by skepticism, others curious. They all wore faint masks of uncertainty, blending into the background of Sarah's own apprehensions. She felt like a conductor preparing to lead an orchestra she wasn't sure would play in harmony. With each shared meal, ice began to crack. Laughter punctured the initial awkwardness, stories began to unfold under the glow of soft lighting, and she witnessed the walls her colleagues had built begin to crumble. However, as they shared heart-wrenching accounts of their cases, Sarah felt an unsettling jolt. These were the very stories that she herself had begun to sidestep, opting instead for a safer, curated version of their reality. The dissonance stirred within her, exposing a raw nerve that had lain dormant. In the midst of the revelry, a voice broke through her thoughts. It was James, the grizzled veteran whom she had tried so hard to connect with. "You know, the hardest thing isn't losing patience," he stated quietly, gathering the attention of the room. "It's the moments in between where we don't talk about it. We just push it down, like it doesn't matter." A hush fell over the group. His words resonated, echoing her own internal conflict while peeling back the layers of vulnerability she had. Carefully constructed, suddenly, the atmosphere shifted. Sarah realized the time had come to confront her own fears. Standing up, she faced her colleagues, her heart pounding as she summoned the courage to share, not just as a leader, but as a fellow human navigating the same stormy waters. "I've been afraid of the depth of this experience. But perhaps what we fear most is exactly what we need to face together." As the air hung heavy with shared uncertainties, Sarah felt a fusion of dread and exhilaration surge within her. The journey of exploration had taken a sharp turn. She was not just leading others, but also confronting the hidden truths of her own vulnerability. A dawning realization struck her: authentic connection is deeply intertwined with the willingness to embrace discomfort. With the gathering shifting from laughter to a raw emotional space, Sarah was compelled to delve deeper. Could her team withstand this newfound revelation, or had she unwittingly stripped back too many layers too soon? The boundary between empowerment and vulnerability now felt razor-thin. As she gathered her thoughts, she sensed an impending revelation surfacing, one that could redefine not only her professional path but also her very identity. The evening held the promise of transformation, yet the question loomed large: what would they discover together in the face of their most profound fears? The room was thick with emotion, the kind that echoed in the silence between shared breaths. A moment of stillness encapsulated Sarah, her colleagues' expressions shifting from unease to a tentative curiosity. The words she had just shared hung in the air, tethering her to the group more firmly than any title or role could. It was exhilarating and terrifying, the balance of vulnerability measured in the collective heartbeat of the room. As she looked around, she realized empathy had unmasked her colleagues. Their eyes reflected understanding, connection forged through the simple act of sharing the heavy burdens of their professions. In that instant, Sarah could feel a transformation take place not just in herself, but in the room as a whole. Each individual wore the marks of their scars openly now, each story a thread weaving into an intricate tapestry of resilience. Yet, her own internal storm still brewed beneath the surface, threatening to consume her newfound courage. What now? She thought, as the realization set in. Opening this door meant that she could neither step back nor minimize her own fears. It was not just about the team, it was about confronting her own lingering hesitations, her instinctive tendencies to withdraw in the face of impending emotional vulnerability. Cold sweat began to bead along her brow as she weighed the possibility of sharing more deeply, of dismantling the facade she had so carefully constructed. What if she disclosed aspects of her personal life that were still raw and unresolved? Would it empower her, or would it weaken the bond they had once shared? James was still watching her, something flickering in his eyes. He had seen her struggle before, had witnessed her dips into the shadows of indecision. "You okay?" he prompted gently, narrowing the gap between their experiences. For a fleeting moment, the weight of leadership felt less like a burden and more like an anchor. "Yeah, just processing," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Each word was an act of will, a reminder that navigating this nebulous territory required steady footing and balance. It was here that she recognized her own latent courage, a still, small voice that urged her to embrace this genuine exchange. "I've always felt like I needed to be the one with all the answers," she continued. "Like if I showed any weakness or uncertainty, it would undermine my ability to lead." Her honesty resonated, sending ripples through the group. She watched as the weight of her admission connected with others' experiences, evoking nods of understanding among her colleagues. "Being real doesn't make you weak," a nurse chimed in, surprising Sarah with her candidness. "It actually allows us to see that we're all in this together." Her heart soared at the sentiment. She had created the space for vulnerability, and now it was returning tenfold. Yet the carefully assembled fragments of clarity were also shadowed by uncertainty. What did this mean for her role as a caregiver? Did embracing vulnerability genuinely benefit her capability to lead? As the evening progressed, a collective honesty transformed the gathering, weaving a complex yet beautiful pattern of shared highs and lows. Sarah felt a growing determination within her. She wanted to be both a leader and a fellow traveler on this journey of growth. However, she couldn't ignore the gnawing doubts. Was she losing the authoritative distance that once shielded her from emotional pain? Could authenticity lead to chaos instead of solidarity? Driven by this whirlwind of conflicting emotions, Sarah resolved to initiate a new phase in their gatherings, one where they would not only share but also explore skills that could aid in processing the realities of their work. They could organize initiatives focused on emotional expression, elucidation of coping mechanisms, and even employ artistic outlets similar to what her children had discovered. Perhaps nurturing creativity would ground them amid their turbulence, but would it feel empowering or expose too much? As Sarah contemplated these ideas, she felt an intoxicating rush coursing through her, a blend of fear and excitement lighting her path forward. She had opened the door to vulnerability for others, but she now faced her personal threshold. Just how far was she willing to go? The evening wrapped around them like a cocoon, igniting raw discussions and deepening connections, yet the flickering candle of self-doubt was still alive within her. Sarah sensed that next week's gathering held the promise of even more scrutiny, not just from her colleagues but from herself. What would she choose to confront next, and would she have the bravery to continue on this unpredictable path? With these thoughts swirling in her mind, she felt the weight of her responsibility, not just as a leader, but as an architect of a profound shift. In the fragile sanctuary they had created, a new question loomed: could she truly embrace the depth of her fears and still foster growth, or would it unravel everything she had built? The answer felt just within reach, waiting to be unearthed in the next gathering. Sarah spent the days leading up to the next gathering in a state of frenetic anticipation. Each morning bloomed with a new clarity, yet her mind swirled with questions and concerns that lingered like a stubborn fog. She readied herself for another session of vulnerability but felt unprepared for the emotional landscapes she knew awaited her. The vision of championing openness through creative outlets was thrilling yet intimidating. Would it resonate with her colleagues or expose weaknesses they were not ready to confront? At the office, Sarah found herself oscillating between her role as the leader and her desire to bond with her peers. She watched them in meetings, analyzing their reactions to the directives she offered, and found herself challenging her preconceptions of authority. With every proposal and every collaborative effort, she felt a growing willingness to embrace the unpredictability of people's responses, an unsettling yet liberating realization. That evening, she jotted down ideas for activities they could introduce: drawing to express stress, writing letters they could choose to never send, or even staging mini-performances as cathartic releases. Each suggestion brought a thrill, yet she could hear her internal critic overshadow these thoughts, whispering doubts about whether such expressions were appropriate in their profession. Could they take a step toward creativity without losing sight of their primary mission? As the day of the gathering approached, evening casual conversations with colleagues became charged with potential. Her words flowed with enthusiasm, but she wrestled with whether authenticity could truly cultivate strength among them. She reviewed her notes, scrutinizing each line for imperfections and crafting it into something that would inspire confidence, but behind her professional facade, emotions collided. Each conversation felt like navigating a tightrope. One misstep might lead to emotional exposure or unrest. Deep within, a part of her still grappled with doubts about her place in their collective journey. Would embracing artistry weaken her footing or grant her the influence to foster growth? She wanted to be both a part of the team and a beacon of guidance, but could such dual roles coexist without conflict? Upon returning home, Sarah joined her children for an art project. Their laughter and messiness provided a stark contrast to her organized professional methods. She marveled at their unfiltered expressions, wondering why something so childlike felt so frightening when applied to her work life. As their fingers smudged colors against paper, she quietly forged her own intentions: to strip away polish and perfection, to allow her deliberate hesitations to melt into the paint strokes, capturing imperfections as markers of growth. Night enveloped the world outside, yet within her, a hurricane brewed. She feared that opening this space in front of her colleagues might unveil not only her insecurities but also those of others, leading to an emotional spiral. But she also recognized that this vulnerability could reforge their connections, embedding resilience in their team's framework. The day had come. Sarah arrived early, heart pounding, setting up the room much like she envisioned it: vibrant, inviting, open to exploration. Yet each centerpiece she arranged felt like an invitation to be seen, and here lay the incongruity. As the light flickered softly overhead, she braced for the weight of her decisions, aware that the stakes had changed dramatically. With each colleague that filtered in, Sarah felt the room becoming a pulsating entity of its own, charged with expectation. They exchanged tentative smiles, yet each face bore the weight of uncertainty her own mirrored back at her. "Let us take this leap together," she whispered to herself, even as self-doubt tugged fiercely at her. She took a deep breath, poised to initiate a dialogue that could either shatter the fragile barriers of their professionalism or weave richer connections. As she stepped forward, a thought clawed at her mind, barely contained: Would they embrace the unpredictability of transformation, or would this journey break the very foundation they had built? In that moment of silence before the journey began, Sarah felt the truth materialize sharply. It was time to confront not just their fears but her own. The door to transformation stood ajar, and as it swung open, she waited to see what awaited them on the other side. As Sarah took a tentative step forward, she felt the weight of everyone's gaze settling upon her, their expectations mingling in the air. This moment, suspended in time, was as much hers as it was theirs. She felt the warmth of the brightly decorated room surrounding her, a stark contrast to the chill of self-doubt that wrapped around her like a shroud. This was the first time she wouldn't just be directing others but actually inviting them into a process she had crafted with both excitement and fear. "Thank you all for being here," Sarah began, the words tumbling out more confidently than she had anticipated. She scanned their faces, taking note of the curiosity and unease that shimmered in their eyes. "Today, we're going to explore how creativity can connect us, how it can serve as a bridge over the gaps we may not even realize exist." An undercurrent of disbelief resonated in her mind as she spoke, questioning if she had any right to lead this journey. She bit her lip, pushing those doubts aside. After all, she had spent countless hours preparing researching methods, reflecting on her intent, and now, standing here, she felt a surprising, simmering strength inside her. "Let's start with an exercise." She gestured toward a table filled with colorful supplies, paints, papers, and various art materials. "I want you to take a moment to create something that represents your current state of mind. It can be anything, no judgments, no perfection required. Just your expression." As her colleagues shifted uneasily, some glancing at one another, she took a deep breath and picked up a brush. Without waiting for their approval, she dipped it into the bright blue paint and swiped it across a blank canvas, letting her instincts take over. The strokes felt liberating, cathartic even, and she hoped to ignite that spark within her peers. Gradually, they began to join in, tentatively at first, mulling over their colors, mixing and smudging their anxieties onto the canvas. It was messy and chaotic, but in that chaos was a beautiful honesty that filled the room with a sense of camaraderie. Sarah watched as faces relaxed, smiles began to break through, and the energy shifted. There was a vulnerability in the air, but it was woven with threads of trust. But then, as she moved about the room offering encouragement, she noticed Mark, one of the quieter team members, standing apart. His brow furrowed, his arms crossed tightly, as if he was bracing himself against the tidal wave of creativity that surged around him. Instinctively, she approached him, aware that this act could either strengthen their team dynamics or highlight divisions. "Hey, Mark. Do you want to share what is holding you back?" Sarah asked gently, her voice steady despite the rising tide of panic within her. He hesitated, eyes darting away. "I don't know, Sarah. This feels unprofessional, childish even." The words hit her with a force that momentarily stole her breath. His confession stirred something deep within her. Here was a reflection of her own hesitations. Was she simply placing her expectations upon others? She could sense now the fine line she was walking. But isn't part of our growth embracing the aspects of ourselves we've hidden away? Sarah pressed, her grip tightening on the brush as she pushed through the unexpected resistance. "We're not just here to survive work, we need to thrive together." The room fell silent momentarily, the others pausing to witness this confrontation. Her insecurity challenged head-on, creating a tension that rippled through the air. Would Mark take the leap, or would he retreat? Would she lose their newfound connection over her vulnerability, or would it strengthen the bonds they were beginning to forge? As she stood in front of him, heart racing, Sarah recognized that this moment might mark a pivotal turning point, not just for Mark, but for her as well. The question loomed heavily: could they be transformed through shared vulnerability? As she waited for his response, an unsettling realization dawned on her: sometimes, the hardest battles are fought within. And true courage came from standing firm amidst uncertainty. Would Mark rise to meet her challenge, or would fear bind him in silence? The room held its breath, waiting for an answer that could change everything. In the charged atmosphere, Sarah held her breath, the silence echoing the uncertainty swirling within each participant. Mark's expression shifted from stoic to conflicted, yet her presence seemed to stir something within him. I suppose I've always been taught to be serious at work, he finally spoke, his voice trembling with vulnerability. But I see now that this isn't about dismissing our responsibilities, it's about connecting. At that moment, Sarah felt a surge of understanding ripple through the room. Mark's admission illuminated the inadequacies they all faced in creating a space for authenticity. "Thank you for sharing that, Mark," she said, warmth filling her tone. "It's clarity like this that fosters growth and understanding, not perfection." Encouraged by his response, more teammates stepped in, revealing insecurities that had festered beneath their professionalism. Laughter broke through, ease emerged. Sarah knew this was how genuine change began, through honest conversations wrapped in understanding. As the group dove deeper into their art, Sarah noticed a radical shift in dynamics, blooming like flowers in spring. Where once anxiety reigned, there was now a playful and collective vulnerability which unlatched doors and sparked creativity. Hours slipped by, and as the gathering neared its end, Sarah surveyed the room. Colleagues were proudly displaying their works, paintings glued to the struggles they had faced that week, journals splayed open to reveal unpolished truths. The energy was electric. They were no longer just co-workers but something more profound, a community bound by shared experiences and support. With renewed confidence, Sarah stepped forward. "As we close today, I feel inspired by each of you. We've bridged gaps that have lingered for too long, confronting challenges that inhibit both our personal and professional growth." She glanced around the room, the strength of their connections palpable. "Let us make this a ritual to reflect, learn, and support one another in our journeys together." The response was overwhelming. Her colleagues erupted in applause, their eyes shining with appreciation. This wasn't merely a gathering of medical professionals sharing case files anymore. This was a team united in vulnerability and collective strength, courage nurturing courage. The following days at the hospital were invigorating. Sarah witnessed a cultural renaissance emerge from their vulnerability practice. Conversations shifted from the usual gossip to discussions infused with empathy and support. Her colleagues began sharing small wins, celebrating one another's contributions rather than belittling them, and she reveled in the unity that sparkled in the AIR.at home. Emily and Noah thrived alongside the transformation of their mother. They took sections of the shared family dialogue and embraced the era of openness in their lives. Emily stood up for herself at school, her voice gaining strength, while Noah found solace in his peers, providing compassion for fellow classmates faced with ridicule. Through an unexpected detour of growth, Sarah realized she had obliterated the limitations once shrouding her identity. She now stood not just as a caregiver at the hospital but also as a leader who embraced her imperfections, reshaping her own narrative. Not only had she conquered the paralyzing fear of judgment, but she had also ascended into her rightful place of competence and recognition. Weeks later, while prepping for another gathering, a gentle knock on her office door interrupted her thoughts. It was her supervisor, beaming with pride. "Sarah, I've been hearing incredible things about your initiatives. I'd like to formally acknowledge your contributions in our upcoming staff meeting." That moment crystallized everything for Sarah. As the recognition settled in, instead of basking in accolades, she felt an overwhelming wave of gratitude. She owed this triumph not to individual accomplishment alone, but to each courageous interaction fostered within her team. As she looked back on her journey, the transformation from hesitant advocate to a beacon of resilience ignited her soul. With the burden of expectations shed, she now thrived wholeheartedly in the brilliance of collective strength, a testament to the ability within us all to rise above adversity through authenticity. Sarah knew this was just the beginning. This final act of resolution bestowed upon her the solid confidence she had sought all along, now paired with a recognized capability that would illuminate her path forward. She stepped into the future not as someone who had simply survived but as one who had actively embraced her power, destined to guide others through the cosmos of their own potential. And with that, she took a deep, reinvigorating breath, the first of many as she faced the remarkable unfolding journey that awaited, a transformative adventure she was now ready to lead. Now is your chance. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, it makes a real difference. Comment your reactions and theories about this story's ending. And share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to support this channel. I can't stress enough how crucial your engagement is. Don't wait even one more second to share.